In this lecture, we're going to test this function, getProduct, that takes a product ID and returns an object with two properties, ID and price. So back to our test file. Let's add a new describe block, getProduct, give it an arrow function. And here we add one test. It should return the product with the given ID. Okay. So we call lib.getProduct, give it the ID of 1. Now we get the result. You want to expect this result to be an object like this. It should have an ID property, which should be the same as the value we passed here. And it should also have a price of $10. Let's run this test and see what happens. npm test. All right, our test failed. Now here, if you look at the expected and received value, you can see these two objects are identical. They both have these two properties, ID and price. So why did our test fail? Because these two objects are in different locations in memory. When we use the toBeMatcher, this function compares the references of these objects in memory. So in this case, because result is in a different memory location than this object, this matcher assumes that these two objects are different, and that's why our test fails. In this test, we want to ensure that this object has these properties. We don't care where in the memory it's stored. So instead of toBe, we use toEqual. So with this, we can check for object equality. Now, let's run the test one more time. npm test. All tests are passing. Beautiful. Now, when testing objects, there are a couple other matchers you can use. So the other matcher is expect result to match object. We pass an object, ID, and price. So how are these two approaches different? Well, with the first approach, both the source and target objects should have exactly two properties, and they should be ID and price. But sometimes you may get an object from somewhere else, and that object might have 50 properties. When testing their equality, you don't want to list all those properties here. Okay? In that case, you can use toMatchObjectMatcher. In other words, if I go back to our lib.js and add a few more properties here, our test will continue to pass. It will not fail. As long as we have these two properties in that object. So let's investigate this. Back in lib.js, let's add a category property here. Now back in our test, let's save the changes. Let's run this test. So npm test. Okay, our test failed on line 55, where we called the toEqual method. So you can see the object that we received has an additional category property. We don't have that here. However, if we comment out this line, you can see our second matcher will make the test pass. So back here, I'm going to comment out this line. Let's run the test one more time. npm test. See, all tests are passing. So with this matcher, you can add only the properties that you are interested in. Now there is also a third way. You can expect this result object to have property. You pass key value pairs here. You want to make sure that it has an ID property and its value is 1. You don't care about the other properties. Also, note that here, the type of this property is very important. So if I change this 1 to a string containing 1, this test is going to fail. Because in our source object, ID is a number. Let's try this. So npm test. Okay, this is where the test failed. Comparing two different types of values. Expected string, but received number. And here you can see This is the value that we were expecting. However, we received a number. So back to the principle that your test should neither be too specific nor too general. When you use to equal or to be, your tests are too specific. It's better to use to match object or to have property. Next, I'm going to show you how to test exceptions.